All right. So good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for taking the time for this first WASH webinar, co-organized with the Car2NJ, and of course led by the WASH section in Geneva. We have 1 hour and a half. I have no idea if it's going to be too short or too long, but we will see. So maybe we can go directly into the presentation. So Ryan?
Yep. Okay, thanks. So thanks everybody for joining. So my name is Ryan Schweitzer. I'm a WASH officer based in Geneva, working in DPSM in the public health section. Also mention my colleague Eva Berenberg, who's not on the call at the moment, but she's also based here and deals a lot with various elements of the WASH monitoring system. So James, I believe you know, your colleague in FIX, and then introducing Maeve de France, who is a partner from Car2NJ, both working on WASH aspects that she'll get into more details on, but also Car2NJ is also engaged with FIX in a lot of different activities. So they're a partner at the global level. So the goals for this webinar are to understand the various elements. When we say WASH monitoring system, what are those elements or what are those components? To recognize what the standards and indicators are that we're dealing with as part of this monitoring system. And also to provide information so that you can access and understand how to use the resources that are available. So the standardized questionnaires, XLS forms, paper-based forms, and also the online resources for doing data analysis, where you access those resources.
So I did quickly a little list. I mean, we will not have the time to present ourselves at the beginning of the session because otherwise it could take some time. So I just extracted from the people who shared some interest. So we have 17 IMOs in HQ in the field. We have two WASH staff and one GIS. And the country represented is HQ, Uganda, Afghanistan, Kenya, Eritrea, Cameroon, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Cote d'Ivoire, Greece, and Brazil. So we have a huge variety of countries and participants. So we'll go quickly through the agenda. So we'll have an overview of the WASH monitoring system that are in place. I will present the GIS Portal, which is also called the borehole database. Then Car2NJ will present us what it's called the CAP survey, which is a knowledge, attitude, practice, household survey. Then we will have the WASH monthly report card. Then conclusion by Ryan, and we will have a session for the Q&As. Just quickly, in terms of logistics, we'll take the Q&A will be at the end. Please, if you can stay muted so everybody hears properly and just to avoid background noise. And you can already, if you want, write down your question in the group chat. If at the end you want to ask something, but the noise is not good, so at least we have the question while we go along. So we will start with the first presentation from Ryan.
Okay, thanks, James. So the first few slides here are to give you an overview of the WASH monitoring system. And the first thing is we need to understand why we're monitoring. What is the objective here? And the objective is to ensure compliance with our standards. And our standards are basically broken down into two different categories. The first is in non-emergencies. This would be our protracted situations or when we are transitioned out of an emergency into a stable situation. And under those conditions, we want to ensure that we're aligning with the SDGs, specifically the SDG related to WASH, which is, as you see here, universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water, which is 6.1, and adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all, ending all practices of open defecation, which is 6.2. So this is what we were working towards during non-emergencies. During an emergency phase, we link to SPHERE. And most recently under the updated SPHERE guidance manual, which was released last year, I think there's 54 different indicators linking to, I think, around 19 or 20 different standards. And so these are just some of the standards that are, or these are these standards that are linked specifically to the key indicators, which I'll talk a bit more about. But you can see the different sectors that they represent: water supply, hygiene, menstrual hygiene, sanitation, and solid waste management. And those are the SPHERE standards that are, again, going to be able to be captured with these 17 core indicators that we'll mention. But there are also, it's important to recognize that in your country or in your specific context, it will be important to understand what are the standards that are most critical to follow and to monitor. So within the WASH monitoring system, there are a lot of indicators which we can talk about. However, when we mention our key indicators, we're talking about 17 specific indicators. They're broken down as follows: 9 for water supply, 4 for sanitation, and 4 for hygiene. And there also can be disaggregated into indicators that we get through household level information and indicators that we get through other means, or what we call access indicators, which tend to be community level statistics or camp or settlement level statistics. Again, the targets when we're in emergencies, we're aligning with SPHERE, and in non-emergencies, we're working towards the SDGs. And that is in the context of the Global Compact for Refugees, when we're trying to, as much as possible, ensure inclusion of our persons of concern in national systems, both development plans, but also in national monitoring systems. So if you haven't had a chance, I would encourage you to look at the SPHERE manual, because it does go into a lot of detail about how they track things. And one thing I think is critical to point out that there's a number of different types of indicators that they deal with. The 2 which we're going to talk about that are linked to our 17 key indicators are progress indicators, which allow for measurement of progress or the achievements towards the overall standard. So this is when we think of the key indicators that have percentage of households that meet a specific target. And again, under the SDGs or in a non-emergency situation, we would hope to shoot for 100% of households meeting that meeting the standard. However, often it's not possible to achieve that, especially during emergencies. So often we look at measuring progress. The second type of indicator is specific target indicators. So you have quantifiable or numerical targets that represent the minimum below which the standard is not being met. So this is when we talk about, for example, liters per person per day. We often reference 15 liters per person per day as a SPHERE standard during emergencies. So those quantifiable targets are the target indicators. So this is an overview of the 17 key indicators that I mentioned. You can see that are divided into the water, sanitation, and hygiene, and color-coded. And then we have the objectives during the emergency and the non-emergency phase. And again, during the emergency, all of these objectives link back to the SPHERE standards. And then during the non-emergency, we're working towards, as you can see, 100% as far as our for all the progress indicators. That's what we're trying to get to, is 100%. In the final column, you can see is the means of verification. So this is where we derive the data to be able to report on these 17 key indicators. And there's 2 ones that we're going to be presenting related to these indicators, which are the monthly report card and the annual Knowledge, Attitudes, Practices, or KAP survey. This is again showing, it's the same list, it's just presented in a slightly rearranged format, showing what are the 9 household indicators that are measured through the KAP, which are shown on the left. So you have 4 different water indicators under the CAP, 3 different sanitation, and 2 for hygiene. And then what are the similar indicators when we talk about access indicators that are captured through the monthly report card. You can see there are a total of 5 for water, 1 for sanitation, and 2 for hygiene. So when we talk about the WASH monitoring system, it can be distilled into 3 main components. The first, which is the borehole database, also referred to as the GIS Portal. The second is the household survey, or the Knowledge, Attitudes, Practices KAP survey, which is done on an annual basis. And the third is the monthly report card. The visualization of the data that comes out of these components is under construction. We have, obviously, the 3 different components have their own outputs, so to speak, but we're looking to develop a consolidated location where you can visualize all of the information that's entered in here, and that's going to be completed this year. And the idea would be that it would be aggregated from site level to country level, and it would have a comparison against the SDGs for that country. So the SDG 1 and the SDG 6.1 and SDG 6.2, we would have comparison for those. In the future, the idea is that we would be able to, on this dashboard, disaggregate further to look at our camp population versus our out of camp, or our camp versus host, or out of camp versus host. And so again, that's kind of the vision that we have, and we're working with some consultants to be able to populate the data for out of camp.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. I think that gave us a good overview of the WASH indicator and all the WASH system. I will be presenting now the borehole database, known as GIS Portal. It's pretty straightforward, as you will see. So basically, it's located on the wash.unhr.org on the tab GIS Portal, and basically it's an interactive map where you can actually look up all the borehole available right now in the database. So we're talking about more than 1,600. As you can see, when you zoom in, I mean, you have an icon showing if it's a hand pump or if it's a borehole. So, for example, that's a camp or settlement in Uganda. So when you click on a specific borehole, you will have all the detail. You can also enable one of the indicator of WASH, which is having a water point within 200 meters by enabling the buffer zone. You can as well change the background map. I mean, if you have good satellite imagery, or if you want to use OSM humanitarian background, and so on. So I mean, this is really pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to show you the second part of it, which is how you can update, edit, or bulk upload. So of course, all these database, you can download the data for a specific country. So you will just download an Excel file if you want to do some analysis, if you want to update some maps, and so on. The other tool, which I'm showing it pretty quickly, to be honest, is how you can update the information on the borehole. So you do that directly online, and you can directly, by clicking on a borehole, edit every information of this borehole. So it goes pretty into technical details, because it goes into water quality and so on, and you can easily update or delete a borehole. So you have a guide for all the step-by-step process already developed. All the fields, all the mandatory fields that needs to be completed, the way you do it. You even have an Excel where you can have some explanation on how to do that, where you already have the ISO code for the country, the mandatory field, and all the information you can provide. Then you can bulk upload, meaning if you have all the information for a country, you can directly upload all the borehole at once from the Excel. So in this example, I'm uploading 12 borehole data. It's in Canada, so that's the process. I just upload the Excel file. I can quickly check if the data is good, and then it directly uploads the data onto the portal. Then I can go and have a look at the data and to see how it displays. And I can, of course, see all the information. And if needed, I can update one specific one or delete it if it's incorrect, and so on. So that's really the process for this GIS portal. The objective is really to gather as much as information we have on the borehole worldwide. And the process is actually really straightforward. I mean, you can download the data, but you can also feed the data pretty easily. So how the data is used is basically, I mean, asset management. So then the wash sector can also have some analysis on, okay, do we need to convert diesel-driven pump to solar pumping, and what type of pump? So, for example, if a wash specialist wants to install a specific pump of a specific brand, but he's never used it, he could be able to go into this database and see where have they been using this type of brand, and then he could have some exchange. Of course, handover to government, reopening of former camps, and of course monitoring, because you have the water quality parameter, the groundwater level. So the takeaway from this GIS portal is, of course, we would like to capture all the borehole serving POC, and that's why we're targeting a session for IMOs, because we're truly convinced that IMOs can be a facilitator in gathering this information from the field. The only 5 mandatory fields are the country name, the GPS location and type of pump, and energy source. And of course, this data that will be shown just afterward is used in the cap mapper. So now I'm going to give the hand to Maeve from Carte-ONG. Just give me a minute so I assign the presentation to Maeve. Here we go.
Thank you. All good my side. So hi everyone, nice to meet you. So we at Carte-ONG, as James and Ryan were saying, we maintain a lot of the public health sections and some fix tools related to mobile data collection, information management in particular, and mapping. So some of you have seen us, I suppose, in the field. And so right now, specifically on the Knowledge Attitude Practices Household Survey. So first of all, what are these surveys about? So related to what Ryan was saying there earlier, they're access indicators, mostly to tell us what UNHCR provides. There's also household indicators to tell us what people of concern actually receive. And the actual CAP survey measures the household indicator data that are of interest in the WASH monitoring system. So if, for example, UNHCR provides 100 of water to 4 different people, well, you could have different ways of seeing how much each people get, and the fact that you have the household survey helps you to actually understand this. So what is this WASH CAP survey? So it's a knowledge attitude practice type of survey carried out by either UNHCR or its implementing partners, normally in every camp, and the objective is at least once a year. So they have been about or occurring at least with mobile tools since 2015, though I'm sure you've all heard of CAPs occurring in some of your countries of operation. And just as background information, there's been specific HQ financed trainings around using CAPS with mobile data collection since 2015, with all of the countries in dark green that you see on the map having received one such training, and also in lighter green the 4 countries that are planned this coming year. What's important to note is that during these trainings, it's mostly WASH people who are invited, both from UNHCR and also from implementing partners. But we always try and encourage for IMOs to also be present, at least 1 or 2, to help WASH people on their way, because mobile data collection and the analysis tools that are made available with this whole WASH CAP package can often, if people have really attended the training, WASH focal points can actually run the surveys themselves, but it's usually better to have IMOs on board also that can help with the technical side of things. So why is it important to actually use the standardized mobile form that's part of this package that I'll present in a few minutes? Both because we've spent a lot of time, and there's now 4 years of experience between making sure that the data quality in this data collection form is well thought out. So there's a rigorous methodology behind it and strong form design. And it also means that it's possible to actually compare data both geographically and through time. So we've seen it in the past, turnover occurring in a given country where somebody has never heard of the WASH CAP standard form, even though it was used the previous year, and therefore using a completely different system, and there not being any possibility of actually comparing the official indicators from one year to the other, and therefore evaluating progress accordingly. So just keep in mind that if you want to benefit from all of these analysis tools, 2-click analysis tools to actually be able to calculate standard indicators, it's really important that you use the whole of the package, including the WASH CAP mobile template that I will be mentioning. So there are 3 main tools in the process. So this mobile template I have been talking about, which I'll introduce in a second, and then there's 2 analysis tools, one that's the WASH CAP Excel analysis tool, and the other the WASH CAP Mapper. I'll do a quick demo of both in a couple of minutes. So all of these tools are part of the process of designing, collecting, managing, and analyzing WASH CAP data. And I'll share a documentation link also on the WASH CAP website afterwards, where you will see that there's also a lot of methodological support that was made available by HQ to help both WASH and IN supporting WASH along the whole process. So first of all, the standard WASH CAP mobile form. So this form is set up in what we call XLS form, which I'm sure a lot of you know. XLS form is the format that is behind such tools as ODK, COBO, which are standard mobile data collection tools. So they all function on a similar format, which is XLS form. An XLS form is a syntax that is set up then in an Excel type document. So in this WASH CAP mobile form, you have all of the instructions to be able to actually modify the form, because the idea is obviously for it to be as useful to a local context as possible. So there's a whole section that really corresponds to everything that, all of the questions that are needed to calculate the standard indicators that Ryan was presenting earlier. And then there are a lot of optional questions that are hidden by default, but that anybody can make visible if it's relevant in that context. And beyond that, anybody can add questions that are relevant for that specific WASH survey that's going to occur. Maybe you want to know there's been a post-distribution monitoring that has occurred, and so you'd like to add 2 or 3 questions specifically on that. That is, of course, totally possible. It's just important to not modify anything that should not be modifiable. So I'll just show you the link on the WASH website. So here you're on the WASH website. If you go to Monitoring System, Annual CAP Survey, and Preparation, as I'm on here, you see the WASH CAP mobile template. I'll just open it very quickly. So here you have all of the instructions, introduction, and here the survey, and the same way that you can modify it. Know that one thing that you can do is actually upload it directly to Kobo and make whatever modifications you want in Kobo. If you're not at all well drilled in XLS forms, you can use Kobo to actually add questions, modify questions, make questions visible, change the types of questions, etc., etc. So the second tool I wanted to mention is the WASH-CAP Excel analysis tool. So when you've actually set up your form properly using the official template and then deployed it in Kobo and done your WASH-CAP data collection, you get your results in Kobo and you can download them through the Kobo interface. So you need to make sure that you download it in CSV with XML values, as explained also in the, let me just show you here the same page that's on the analysis side. Here in the annual CAP survey, you have documentation for each different module, and on the analysis side, you have a manual explaining all of these different steps, and also the analysis tool itself that you can download. So once you download the data from your Kobo interface, all you need to do, let me just run the video, is follow the different steps. First of all, import the XLS forms template that you've used, and if you've used Kobo to modify the data, all you need to modify the form, all you need to do is actually export your XLS form from Kobo and then re-import it here in the tool. So you can, here we have an example for Sudan. Then you need to clear out the existing data in the tool by clicking Reset of the data to make sure that your indicators are calculated on the data you've just imported. You can import a data set, so the one you got from Kobo. And once you've imported the data, you can actually straight away go to the Core Indicator tab of the tool, and not only do you have a certain number of predefined graphs set up, but you also, so on like the distance to nearest water point, daily water consumption, such graphs, you also have a line where all of your 11 key indicators that Ryan was talking of before are automatically calculated. And you've got a few filters, like for example the camp filter if your data set is covering different camps that you can look at. You also have a few tabs that are for more specific individual analysis of questions. Note that this part of the tool is what we call the Kobo Excel Analyzer that was developed by Atcha. The only thing that we did is add the Core Indicator tab and calculations. And also the possibility of comparing 2 different data sets for the core indicators. So once you've imported one data set, you have another button that's appeared in the Instructions tab where you can actually import a second data set. And when you import that second data set, which can either be the same data set if you want to compare next to each other 2 different, maybe 2 different zones of the camp, but you could also import 2 camps from 2 different countries if you wish. And so we see that a new line has been added where you can have this second data set, and the graphs also have updated so that you can compare the data from the 2 zones or the 2 countries as you wish. So this gives you an overview of the WashCap Excel analysis tool. Yet again, you have more instructions and further information in the tool itself and also in the manual associated to WashCap data analysis. Then the last tool I wanted to show, the WashCap Mapper. What I'll do is I'll just do a demo directly of the tool. So this time we're not going to the GIS portal. We're not going to the analysis side directly of the WashCap. We're going to go to the CAP Mapper tool, which is also available on the UNHCR Map Center for your information. So when you get to this page, it tells you welcome, and all you need to do is import that exact same file that you downloaded from Kobo. You know, when you're on Kobo, when you go to the download here, and if you click CSV and XML type values. So when you download this, all you need to do is go and find it on your computer and import it. So I'll come over, I'll go back to this in a second. If, for example, there's a couple of errors like survey date could not be read, it lets you also update the data on import here. So here we're with fake data on the area of Bitou in Republic of Congo. And now I see, first of all, my base map, OpenStreetMap base map, and I can mention, by the way, that all of this mapping was done by Cartoonji volunteers. So if you're ever interested in having base mapping of some of your refugee camps, don't hesitate to let James or Ryan or Eva know, because we always have volunteers interested to help out on this. We also see here exactly the same data that what you saw in the GIS borehole database, the GIS portal, because this tool helps read that data. And in gray, these are all the household surveys that's occurred. Now, obviously, what I'm interested in is more to actually visualize the indicator data. So all the indicators on which HQ have deemed that there's an interesting geographic component are here. So if, for example, I want to know which ones are the households collecting drinking water from protected treated sources, I can select it, and straight away all of the households are turned to green if the indicator is met and to red if they're not met. So here, for example, we have urban refugees that are outside the camp that is here. So all of the refugees in the camp have water from protected treated sources, while it's not the case for all of the urban refugees. And one interesting component is we've also integrated the same element that you have in the GIS portal, where you can actually see a buffer zone around each of the boreholes, the UNHCR boreholes, to just make sure that you know the information on which are the households that are in that 200-meter perimeter. You can also click on an individual point, and it's going to tell you both whether I have a demo effect here. My demo isn't showing. My data isn't showing. But here, for example, you see the it was just taking a bit of time here. Right. So you have the maximum distance from household to potable water collection point. That is what household members have actually given as a figure. They've said, oh, it takes me, I think, 5 minutes to go to the water point, and therefore the 5 minutes are then calculated into distance. And you also have an automatic calculation of the distance as the crow flies to the closest borehole. So here we see that it's pretty close in this case. The people said it was approximately a certain number of minutes that corresponds to 80 meters, and the automated distance is 105 meters. So here was the sort of recap on the WashCap Mapper. And if you were to keep in mind as IMOs a couple of specific information, First of all, keep in mind that WASH officers might ask for your advice to support them on implementing mobile data collection. So now you know these tools are available, and rather than starting from scratch the whole of a form, you can go from the standard form, and it should hopefully make you gain a lot of time. I've seen it in the field before. And we also encourage you to be proactive in suggesting to any WASH officer you know of that will be implementing or following partners' knowledge attitude practice survey that these tools exist and why they could be relevant to use. So as a couple of takeaways, remember there's 3 tools to support WASH-CAP implementation: the mobile template, the WASH-CAP Excel Analyzer, and the WASH Mapper. And also, if you want to use the automated analysis tools, which are, as you saw, 2 or 3 click buttons, it's necessary to have used the global WASH-CAP mobile template form. That is adaptable, but if you haven't used it, you won't be able to benefit from these tools, and it will be on your shoulders to actually make those very complex calculations of all of those key indicators that Ryan was talking about earlier. So you have the link to all of the available documentation with a manual for each different module of the WASH-CAP implementation. And we're also preparing video screens to explain each different step in 3 to 5 minute videos to help you on your way of your WASH-CAP implementation. So I will now hand back over to...
Thanks, Maeve.
Thank you, James.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of questions already, but we'll keep that for the end. Let me share back the content. Here we go. And I will give the hand to Ryan for the WASH monthly report card.
Okay.
Here we go.
Thanks, Maeve, for that. So again, what Maeve presents down there was the household survey, which links to the household indicators, which tells us what basically the experience is from the household level in terms of the WASH services. And so the next component of the monitoring system is to link to what is provided by UNHCR. So I thought Maeve did a great job with the pie graph, saying that we, in some cases, may provide 100 liters to 4 people, but you don't know what their experience is. So this is looking at what is reported. So what is the access in terms of what's reported. So we call this the monthly report card. There are 8 indicators that are included in here. We call these access indicators. The data is entered through an online platform. The address is shown there, his.unhcr.org, and the HIS stands for Health Information System. And that this monthly report card for WASH is one of the forms that's available in the HIS, and there's a number of other forms that we won't get into detail on. The idea is that these are filled in by WASH staff. However, IMOs might support staff or take full responsibility if there are no WASH staff in country. We've set it up so that there's one account for each country, and there's a common credentialing system. If you have access, or if you don't have access, then please contact Ava. You can see the address link there, or you can contact me, the address shown on the first slide. But in most cases, I believe actually in all cases for those in attendance, we've already established credentials for your country. So there's 2 different types of forms that are available within the online platform. There's the monthly form, or monthly report card, which again, it's meant for our staff, or in some cases, maybe implementing our operational partners to collate that data. And a lot of the information you'll see is stuff that's standardly reported by implementing partners. And then the form is divided into two different subforms, one that's filled out during an emergency and one that's in a non-emergency. The second form is referred to as the WASH-CAP form, and that is basically taking the results from that annual CAP survey that Maeve presented on. So it's taking the analyzed results. So that's primary data that's been collected in the field, but you're taking just the outputs of the analysis and then putting that into this form online. So now we're just going to go through video. So you can see that is the HIS website. You get credentials, and then just direct your attention to the data form. So you can see here, clicking through the data form, there's the WASH CAP form, which you can see there on the right, and below it is the WASH report card. And so the way you add forms is you just hit that yellow button and then select your location from a drop-down, starting with the continent and then the specific region. We'll go through just a test here, and it'll direct you to a country and then to a specific location. So each form is filled out for a specific location and should be filled out on a monthly basis. So you select the time frame, and then you come to the phase where you select between emergency status of emergency or post-emergency. And the form is really straightforward how you fill it out. Population, the quantity of water produced if you have a borehole with a meter, that's where you get that information from. The total number of latrine stances, both communal and households, number of bathing shelters. These are all things that are commonly reported in project partner agreement reports. And then it automatically calculates the data for the indicator information for you, so you can see comparing it against the different standards during emergency. And similarly for the post-emergency, the form is a bit more in depth with a number of different additional indicators calculated. But you can go through and see all these. It's very straightforward, and again, it's reported information that you're entering in here. So there's information on water quality, the water supply, sanitation, and also hygiene. And the second form is where you enter in the WASH CAP. So that's, you can see here. So it's very similar. You select the location, and then you enter the data in. And again, this is the analyzed data, the analyzed indicator data. That's going to be derived on an annual basis. So you can see this is for 2019. You create the form, and then you're entering in those 9 different indicators. So you select the date of the survey, what time period it would be covering, would have been the previous one before you created the form, etc. And again, all this information is very straightforward and would be contained in the CAP report. So this is, yeah, so you can, I'm not sure, yeah, okay, so I'm just going through here calculating these, but basically you can see the information included here. It's all the same indicators that are listed. Okay. So I think, yeah, again, pretty straightforward here. Those indicators sort of have to make you watch entering on all these details, but that's basically the way. So that is just an online platform for capturing the data that's included in the CAP. So the takeaway points from this, the monthly report card, it's one of the forms that's included in the health information system, or it also has another name called the Integrated Refugee Health Information System, or IRIS. But that's one of the forms, and this data is derived from regular partner updates that are used to track progress against PPAs. And it links back again to the 8 access indicators that I mentioned. And then there's a separate form that's a repository for the WASH CAP results. So some conclusions. The WASH monitoring system has standards that are aligned to the SDGs during non-emergency situations, and during emergencies linked to SPHERE. There are 17 key indicators that we track at a minimum. There are 9 household indicators and 8 community or access indicators, but there are other indicators that are available. And if you go to the website that may have indicated for the CAP survey, you can see I think there's over 40 different indicators included in the CAP. The 3 main components when we talk about the WASH monitoring system are the borehole database, the household survey, and the monthly report card. And for the borehole database, you can see the link here. It's also referred to as the GIS Portal. There's the Excel templates available. There's the online verification during upload. For the CAP survey, again, the vision is to do this on an annual basis. And there's a lot of available resources online. The standardized Excel forms, but also there are paper forms. There's training materials available. There's the CAP Analyzer Excel file and the online CAP Mapper. And you can upload the results online on the WASH report card. So the WASH report card is meant to be done on a monthly basis. It's all secondary data that we're collating from implementing partners or operational partners. And it has both emergency and non-emergency aspects or subforms, and tracks the 8 access indicators. And then finally, just a plug for the fact that we're developing this WASH dashboard, which will be on the wash.unhr.org website, and it will be pulling the information out of IRIS. So that's the Health Information System online portal, and it will provide an overview by country on our key indicators, and then it'll compare directly to the SDGs. So with that, I guess we'll take any questions.
Maybe just before we go to the question, maybe Maeve, you wanted to add something you forgot to mention.
Yes, I saw it appeared on the screen. I just wanted to say that we presented the WASH CAP, but keep in mind that there's also a reduced version of the WASH CAP that's called the Rapid Household Survey, that is just the main indicators that should be calculated or captured during an emergency. So keep in mind that if you ever need this reduced version, you can also get in touch with HQ, and we'll probably update the website with this in the coming weeks.
Great. Thanks a lot. I'm sure there was a lot of information. We actually pretty much on time, even shorter than an hour. So I can open the floor for questions. So Abusa, I don't know if this was intended, but you raised your hand. Or if somebody wants to take the first question, please go ahead. I can see somebody's writing something as well. Let me have a look. If somebody wants to start, feel free. Huh? Edouard.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wrote down the question in the chat. I can repeat as well. Can you see it?
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the screen if you want.
Maybe just read it out. So.
Yeah, so maybe a question on the CAP survey. So in the documentation, there's a mention of sampling, which means that the survey results have to be weighted accordingly in order to get the correct value for the indicators. So as you know, indicators value after reweighting can change drastically depending on the sampling strategy. And that's the reason why often sample-based surveys are usually analyzed with statistical software. Now my question is, how do you address this element within the Excel CAP analyzer approach? Over.
So I mean, maybe Ryan, you want to add after on the sampling strategy, but just on the CAP analyzer side of things, it's basically just it's more a question of how you actually define your sampling strategy uphill and how many households for each camp you actually capture, etc. So there's no specific treatment in the Excel CAP analyzer. It's basically calculating for the whole of the data sets that you import. So if you import 2 different camps, it's going to calculate the average for the 2 different camps. So the idea is to make sure that you have one data set per camp, which will mean that you then have the values for each camp well captured in there. But maybe Ryan, you want to add to that?
No, so I mean, if I recall, the way that we have structured the recommendations for the sampling approach, it's such that it's I think it was systematic random sampling is how we're approaching it, and recommending that at the end of the day, even though we have the ability to do disaggregated presentation in the CAP analyzer, so in the Excel file, to be able to say, for example, the comparison of average figures, for example, within those camps, it's to give you what are the indicative figures, but the number, the sampling strategy that we generally recommend is that if you're if it's necessary to sample at a sub-camp level, so like a zonal level or a block level, then you can obviously make inferences to that zone or block level. Otherwise, the results are really generalizable to the camp because the sampling approach is systematic random sampling throughout the entire camp with no disaggregation. That's my understanding.
So the analysis unit is the camp itself, not inside. So you can't get analysis from within the camp itself, right?
I mean, you can, but I think those results need to be taken with caution. I think is the general. We have done, and we can share. If you go to the website, there's a paper on the random on an approach for sample selection that uses a cluster sampling approach that we're recommending during emergencies, and that does get into the design effects of the individual questions and the approach, which would allow you using a similar level of effort to do analysis at a sub-camp level. So when I say similar level of effort, we recommend, I think in general, around a sample size around 360 for, I mean, there's a whole section on the calculating sample size, but it's around 360. And we've done testing to say what is the minimum sample size and sampling approach that you can use to still be rigorous and have understanding of what your confidence intervals are. And the sampling size that we've targeted to be able to do that is 60 households. And so again, there's a whole paper that talks about that whole approach and the modeling that was done and the testing that we've done, and we're looking to further validate that. But if you did apply that sampling approach, you could in theory do sub-camp level in 6 divisions and still have an overall level, overall sample size for the whole camp, which is on the order of magnitude the same as you would if you applied a camp level CAP analysis, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, to be fully honest, my question was also a way to introduce also some one tool that could also be an alternative, also a bit more complex than Excel, the Excel analyzer, which is a package we're developing now for survey data analysis. So I'm just pasting the link just in case, but that's also something that could be seen as an alternative in case you want to have the sub-camp level analysis. So
yeah, I think in general our recommendation is we've developed these tools so that in areas where we have staff that aren't necessarily very statistically savvy and have considerable operational needs. They need to collect the data, they need to be able to analyze it, but they don't necessarily have the understanding to be able to run a lot of statistical programs, and they maybe don't even have access to those programs. So the idea behind this was to have something that can be taken off the shelf, so to speak, modified slightly, but the analysis can be done relatively easily, and then it's comparable over time. Anything else to add, Maeve?
No.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Edouard. Do you have any additional question from someone? Anybody wants to take the floor?
Maybe just an additional question. How do you see the integration of the CAP survey with the ground bargain commitment on a single data collection exercise? Because somehow that one of the points that is being raised by the ground bargain commitment on a single unit assessment is to have like it's rather to have like a large multi-sectorial survey rather than having like a specific survey, which is different from your monthly monitoring. I'm really focusing on the CAP survey.
Yeah. I think in general, I mean, I think there's a lot of conversations about that, and I think at the end of the day, those types of negotiations they have to take place at the country level. But I think inevitably, I mean, what our official stance would be, as long as we're capturing data that meets the needs of the country first and foremost, but we should have included at least if it's a CAP survey, our 9 key indicators, right? That would be what we argue for, and for the simple reason that they're included in SPHERE, so during emergencies, we should be ensuring that we're meeting those targets, and they're also aligned with SDGs. But at the end of I mean, there is a lot of discussions at the global level with IOM, with others, about the benefit of multi-sector needs assessments. And inevitably, when the more sectors involved, it means the less questions per sector. So I would say that this is not duplicative of those efforts, but it can be complementary when you need to know more information. Because at the end of the day, if you're gonna boil down WASH into 5 questions, because that's what somebody says that's the space that you have available in a multi-sector needs, then we're never going to get information on menstrual hygiene, for example. So I think you can't have a one-size-fits-all. You have to have multiple tools, and the CAP is what we advocate for in the refugee response for WASH as a sector assessment.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Edouard. Anybody else wants to take the floor? We still have some time. So.
Hi, Andrea from Copenhagen.
Hi, Andrea.
James, how are you? Congratulations for the presentation. It was really interesting. Just a quick question. In the beginning, you mentioned that in the dashboard that we also monitor SDGs 6.1, 6.2. You will compare those data coming from the CAP survey with out-of-camp data and even host communities. And it wasn't clear to me whether the CAP also includes some out-of-camps populations or not. And if not, where would this data would come from? And just a matter of curiosity, how many countries has the CAP survey been rolled out at the moment?
So maybe I'll answer the first part, and then maybe I'll let you answer the second part of how many countries. So the answer is the CAP. It's maybe been applied in camps or settlements and some of the host community contiguous to those camps or settlements, but it hasn't been applied. It hasn't targeted out of camp persons of concern to date. So that data for the out of camp population, that's something that we're looking to identify what the most reliable data sources are, and our vision on that one slide was to have the ability to do that comparison in the future. However, right now we don't have that ability beyond a few one-off studies that have been done. I can think of one by Impact Initiatives that looked in urban refugees, comparing their access to WASH services versus the host community in those urban settings. But beyond that, we're in the process of identifying where we would get that data from. So on the number of countries, maybe Maeve, you can answer that one.
So we don't have any precise figure on that because we've always, or HCR has always left it very open up to now for country operations to use the standard tools or their own tools. Everything was up on the website, and there's been communication, for example, last year during the Global WASH meeting on the topic, but nobody was forced up to now to use it. Ryan, I'll let you comment on that. But, basically, we actually sent a survey through very recently, a month ago, to know how many country operations had actually used the standard tools. And the rate of response was, I think we had 30 or 40 respondents, and we had about a quarter using the standard tools. So to be honest, it was mostly countries where they had the WASH training occurring, so more or less corresponding to the map I showed there earlier, except for a couple of countries. But it's also because the first year or two we were doing a lot of piloting of the tools, improving of the tools, making sure the tools were as user-friendly as possible. And it's only really this year that there's been a decision by HCR to actually scale this up as much as possible, which is also why this webinar was organized, because we realized there wasn't that much awareness around these tools as we thought there was, or as HCR thought there was. So it's really one of the reasons why we're also improving the documentation a lot in the coming weeks. And we'll be presenting the tools in detail at the WASH Global meeting next month in Kenya also, and are hoping that a lot of there will really be a difference in scale this year in the usage of this tool. But Ryan, maybe you want to add to that?
No, I would say, just again reflecting on my earlier comments, that it's very difficult to be prescriptive. I mean, there's a tension between saying that if we're looking to integrate refugees into national systems, then at the end of the day, we should be supporting whatever national monitoring system exists. So that means that we should be collecting the data that we can then input into that system, which may not necessarily align 100% with our WASH monitoring system. So what we've been communicating to our staff in the field is to say, first and foremost, we align to national standards. But at a minimum, if, for example, they include collecting 10 indicators, then we need to look at those 10 indicators against our 17 core indicators and ensure that we're complementing those to ensure we meet, at a minimum, our 17 core indicators. And so I think our approach in the past has been to develop these tools and to make them available and to do some trainings. But it's also, again, as you know, difficult within UNHCR to mandate that these are collected. So I think what our approach now is to say, we have these tools. If you're not collecting the data according to this, that's fine, but only if you can demonstrate that you have the information required to report on these 17 indicators. And so that's our approach from now moving forward. And I think, given the comments and questions from some of the audience, like Eduard, it seems like maybe has, and others have the capacity to do much more rigorous analyses and et cetera. So maybe these tools aren't of use for you, but I think in a lot of situations we don't have the staff that can do that, and they're not aware that these resources exist. So I think we're hoping that through these webinars, we can further disseminate information about these tools and their availability.
And sorry, if I can just quickly follow up on this. How is this data as of today disseminated? Is it available at the camp level, aggregated level, or is it, for now, it's not disseminated and it would be through that dashboard that you mentioned? That was just...
So to date, the reports have not been disseminated. They've been, the cap has been applied in country, and the reports have stayed in country. We're now in the process of collating all the standardized caps that have been done and integrating that information into the online health information system in that as a WASH cap form, which will then be linked to the dashboard, which is under development.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Anybody else for any question?
I don't know whether you're hearing me.
A bit louder.
Are you hearing me? I'm Michael from Arua, Uganda.
Can you just speak a bit louder and it should be okay?
Yes, I'm Michael from Arua.
Okay.
Arua, Uganda.
Yes, hi, Michael.
Hi, I'm trying to give a feedback on the use of the tools, the standardized tools for us. In the field, we happen to use Kobo that we intend to make the partners to do their report on. But the challenge is that it's so slow. Quite a number of partners are not really using the tool to collect the information we need and submit timely. It has been a hurdle that we're pushing, and perhaps it's a way also that I want to appreciate this session, that it will help me look at what the standard tool is and what we've been using, make a comparison and be able to be conclusive whether we are on track or not. If we're not, then see how we can start using the standard tool. I don't know whether that is clear.
Thanks, Abusa. So basically, you were mentioning you're struggling a bit with the implementing partners to collect data, and it's rather slow. So you were actually happy about the presentation that could help you standardize tool to work with partner.
Definitely. Thank you. Definitely.
Ryan, do you want to comment on that maybe? Or?
Oh, yeah, maybe just a clarification to Michael, or in your opinion, what do you think is the bottleneck with partners? Is it in the use of the mobile phones themselves, like the deployment and the uploading of it, or is it in, I guess maybe what specific aspect do you see as being the bottleneck?
Yeah, initially, precisely, there are two things I see. One is that the partners don't understand the technology and the beauty it has in terms of consolidating information and being able to do analysis to identify gaps. And secondly, is that probably the staff who was spearheading this had, of course, limitations of understanding the tool and how he went on to popularize it among the partners was, I think, not in the best approach. And perhaps, probably, I would encourage that this will be that continuous follow-up from HQ, possibly to see that some uptake of the innovations that are coming up there. And perhaps, yeah, we are a new IM team in Arua, and we're trying to see that we put some of these standardized tools into practice. And that's why I was really appreciating that these kind of sessions are quite suited for us in the field.
Okay, good. No, thanks for those comments. I think, yeah, it is a challenge, and it takes quite a bit of effort to train in the use of mobile data collection tools. But I think also, just to clarify, I think the expectation that we should have as UNHCR, whether it's IM or WASH staff, is that it's difficult, I think, to expect that we can completely delegate the analysis for whether it's WASH or any other sector, the analysis of the data from the household level onto our partners, both from a rigor perspective, but also from a data protection. So I think we need to be involved in that, and we need to do some hand-holding initially to ensure that the data is both collected in a rigorous way, but it's cleaned and analyzed also through a rigorous process. So I know that Carto-NG was involved in a training of WASH staff in Uganda last year and has provided some remote support. So, so yeah, I would say just again that I think we should think about the training requirements that we have for our partners, but also understand what their role specifically would be in terms of oversight of the enumerator teams. And then as far as analysis, maybe that's something that's done by UNHCR, or overseen, I would say, at least by UNHCR staff. Any comments, Maeve, on your experiences there, specifically in Uganda?
Well, Uganda, so I was the one deployed there last year, and it's true that we had 50 people during a week for the training, so it was quite intense, and it wasn't always easy to get everybody with the right level of information. But I saw some of the CAP results from last year that were very successfully collected. I think it's a question of sort of continuous, during the training, some of the findings at the end that were shared by the participants it was important to sort of keep in touch and maybe, do a one-day workshop, reminder workshop the following year amongst the participants to make sure everybody kept a certain level of expertise on these subjects and could help out. So this is one solution. Another one is I shared on the chat there an email address where you can ask for support if you need either just a Skype conversation to get you or the partner back on track on CAP, on what are the important things to take into account and the basic things you really need to keep in mind when you're implementing. That is totally feasible. You can also send us your adapted WASH CAP form for advice if you want. There was also a request from HQ to all WASH focal points send through their past CAP reports to us, actually just to capture the past data in IRIS, because HCR didn't want HQ didn't want country offices to take the 4 years of data and actually capture it, as most of the WASH teams in the field are pretty overwhelmed already. So we're filling that in at the moment. And our idea was to actually give feedback to every country that sent through their report on what were the things that we saw as highly problematic, and give a bit of advice for future CAPs. So I can't remember if Uganda was in the list of reports sent, but it's also possible for you to send through the AROA report or like any difficulties you have at the moment, and we can support as best we can. Obviously, we're not going to replan a new HQ financed training in Uganda when you were one of the countries that benefited from it last year, but we are hoping to produce those extra bits of documentation that can also be shared with implementing partners to help them in the process of using mobile data collection. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, Maeve, so one thing which I think is really beneficial, Michael, is if we are clear on what the bottlenecks are, and we're also clear on what in your opinion, what is the best way to resolve those. So as Maeve mentioned, we've done face-to-face trainings. However, the budgetary implications are quite large, and also just a matter of time and resources. So CartoENGIE only has so many staff that they can deploy. So our thoughts right now are how do we create additional materials which can reinforce messages that have been already communicated. So we've done a training last year. What can we do now to kind of follow up, to retrain, or what resources can we provide to you so that you can retrain yourself? And so what they're working on now is in development of very short videos, which we'll have up on a YouTube channel that cover specific topics that have been pre-identified as being problematic. So one thing is on how to contextualize the standard form to add questions that you might want to do they're just extra questions. So how do you do that without impacting the functionality of the tool for the analysis purposes? So Maeve is working on these discrete videos, which will be up on the YouTube channel. But I think we also encourage any feedback that you have to identify ways that we can improve kind of the suite of tools that we have available.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, and I mean that was exactly the purpose of this webinar. It was to present all the tools. It looks like there's a lot of interest on the CAP tool. So for example, I mean, we will send a feedback survey to everybody to have your feedback on this session. And if you want to have a dedicated webinar on one of those topics, we will be happy to organize as well as a follow-up meeting and in parallel of development of YouTube tutorials and so on. Do we have any maybe a last question?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Can you?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Hervé Kokwe, and I'm calling from Bangladesh operation. And my question is also related to the CAP survey, and it's more on the use of the data coming out of the CAP survey. And currently, we are trying to put in place a set of dashboard, and one of them is the WASH dashboard. In this dashboard, we have a section, an analysis section, where we found very useful to put all the finding of the recent CAP survey, which has been done in Bangladesh operation. And the question is about the update, because we have a monthly dashboard versus a survey which is done maybe 2 times a year. So what would be the advice of CAT-ONJ on the regular update of the indicator which are coming out of the findings? Hello?
Yeah. I would say it's more a question for Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if it's again the cap we shoot for an annual basis in most sites, and I know in Bangladesh, given the scale of the emergency, the available resources, the number of partners involved, it's kind of a unique case. So one thing you could think of is in terms of the use of the WASH report card. So maybe that's something we can also discuss, because I know the sites have changed over time, so now we have the camps. But I would say for those regular updates, the report card would be more appropriate. Does that make sense? And then when you do the full CAP survey, then you could include that on your dashboard.
Okay. All right. I wasn't at the first line of, during the survey, but I think I will communicate with my colleague who was working with the team, CAT-ONJ team, and maybe we can consider the report card instead of the indicator which are coming directly from the CAP survey. Yes, thank you for your advice.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. I just put the slide on the contacts. If you have any questions, feel free to contact.
It will also be loading, or we can circulate a link to the video at the end. Is that correct, James?
Yeah. We will share the presentation. We will share the video if the recording went well, and a little feedback survey to know your interest, what went well or not, and to see what follow-up we can make from this webinar.
James?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yvon from Geneva.
Hi, Yvon.
Yeah, just before you finish, I just had a small question, and it was related to the monthly report. And I've noticed that you've got from operations you can select locations and everything, and I was wondering if these locations in these forms or in the database behind it's linked to any of the P coding we have in the global GIS database. Over.
That's a good question, Yvonne, and I will direct you to our colleague Vincent. But I know that because the sites that are available for selection in the WASH form are those that are available in the HIS, in the overall HIS. And so I know that there's been a lot of communication with you and Vincent, and I most recently got a file from him to try and to do some comparison. But maybe that's something that we can sit down. My understanding, the short answer to your question is yes, there is a link with P codes. but not in all cases, I guess, is there a P code available, is my
Okay.
understanding.
Yeah, thanks. So we'll further discuss this. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Yvon. Maybe a final.
Maybe the last thing on that point, James. If
Yeah.
it would be great if those in attendance, if they can check to see number one, if they have access, if they've been given access, if they have a WASH colleague who has access to IRIS, the health information system, and then if they can check in there through the monthly report card, if all the sites that are represented in the drop-down list, if those correspond to the sites that you have, and if there's any missing, please do let us know.
All right. Point noted. Any final comment from Ryan or Maeve?
No, just thanks to everybody.
Maybe one to say that, well, this webinar is on WASH CAPS, but know that there are similar surveys made available by the public health section on other components, such as nutrition with the SENSE surveys, which I suppose a lot of you know of, but don't hesitate in case you're ever interested to get in touch with James or myself, and we can relay the information accordingly.
Great. So thanks everybody for taking the time. We'll follow up with what we've mentioned, and have a nice day, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.